"Thanks for joining us, Mr. Cartwright," she said, her voice low and filled with warmth. "Gabriella's told us a lot about you and what you do." Now it was he who fidgeted, not because of the woman crossing the room toward him, but because it went against all his instincts to talk about his work. He tried to settle his rapidly racing heartbeat. Gabby was only 6. How much could she even know about what he'd done? "You must be Gabby's teacher," Tom asked, even though the answer was obvious, needing to say something before she thought he was mute. There went the megawatt smile again. "Miss Rose," she said, before closing the distance between them and touching her hand to his forearm, leaning in ever so. Or Caitlin, just not to the class. Her voice had dropped to a whisper, barely audible, as if she was letting him in on a tightly held secret. Tom fought the urge not to take a step back, was conscious of all the little faces turned their way. He wasn't used to someone being in his space, had been trained to keep a distance in most situations. Had craved this kind of contact for so long that he'd forgotten what it felt like. All the same, he was pleased that she was Miss Rose and not Mrs. "Tom, please," he said, forcing a smile and wishing it had come naturally. "Mr. Cartwright reminds me of my father." And that was not something he liked to be reminded of. "Well, Gabriella, I think it's time you introduced your uncle to the class." Gabby beamed up at Tom as he touched his open palm to her hair, before scurrying off and standing tall and proud before her classmates. "I did my project about my Uncle Tom because he's so interesting," she began. Tom nodded when she looked at him, as if needing his support. "He works for the United States Navy, but he doesn't go away anymore because now he teaches new—" Gabby's face flushed. She paused, clearly stuck. A warm, soft breath touched close to Tom's cheek. He jumped as it was followed by a gentle squeeze of his arm. Words whispered near his ear. "I think she needs some help up there." He thrust his hands in his pockets and crossed the room in 4 strides, wanting to rescue his niece from embarrassment, but needing to put space between him and the pretty teacher, too. He'd spent too many years almost exclusively in the company of men to deal with that kind of sensory overload. She looked too good, smelled too good. Hell, she even sounded too good for his liking. "Recruits," he said, smiling at the children, pushing any thoughts of women aside. "I teach new recruits." Gabby leaned into him, and he let his arm fall around her. It didn't matter what happened, what had happened. She grounded him, made everything right, showed him what was important, made him realize that he had to suck up his pain and push past what was holding him back, what had stolen his career from him, made him want to stay strong. "So," said Gabby, confidence returned, "Uncle Tom was a Navy SEAL, like as in a seal in the ocean." She giggled, and the other little people did the same. "But really it means—" Tom took over again when she floundered, wanting her to enjoy her school project rather than be nervous. "A SEAL is someone in the Navy's sea, air, and land team for special operations." The room went silent. Gabby plopped down to listen, and suddenly Tom felt like a fraud, standing there, not knowing what to say or do. He glanced at Caitlin, the teacher, with her kind smile. She leaned forward a little from where she stood against the wall, as if to encourage him. Suddenly he was back in the classroom as a kid again, wanting to act out and be naughty because he didn't know what else to do. Silly, because the man he'd become knew how to behave, how to take orders, do what was expected of him. And whether he was on active duty or not, he had no intention of letting the side down.